Did you know the Apple II's success wasn't just about hardware? By 1978, it had generated $2 million in profits, thanks to a growing library of user-generated software. This was the seed of Apple's ecosystem strategy, a philosophy that would later define the iPhone and beyond. Join us as you fall asleep while we explore how a simple computer inspired a blueprint for modern tech integration and built one of the world's largest technology companies. The garage origins. Picture a Los Altos garage in 1976 where two Steves worked late nights. Steve Wozniak had been building circuit boards since high school, while Steve Jobs saw potential in turning hobbies into products. Their first prototype, the Apple I, came from Wozniak's desire to create something simpler than the complex computers of the time. Jobs sold his Volkswagen van to fund materials, and Wozniak parted with his prized HP calculator. Their budget barely covered the wooden case. The Homebrew Computer Club became their testing ground. At these meetings in a Menlo Park garage, engineers shared ideas about building computers for everyday people. When Wozniak demonstrated his prototype there in March 1976, reactions were mixed. Some admired the clean design, but others doubted its practicality. One attendee offered to buy the boards on the spot. That moment convinced Jobs they had something worth selling. Computer kits existed in 1976, but they required technical skills to assemble. The MIT's Altair 8800 needed toggle switches for programming, while the Apple I came with a working motherboard. Wozniak's design used fewer chips, making production cheaper. A local computer store ordered 50 units at $500 each, but they had to be built within 30 days. Jobs secured parts on credit, and they assembled the boards in Jobs's family garage with help from friends. Every dollar mattered in those early months. Components sometimes arrived defective, delaying orders. When Byte Shop demanded fully assembled units instead of bare circuit boards, the Steves had to improvise cases. They used local cabinet makers for wooden enclosures and sourced power supplies separately. Payment terms were strict, 30 days net, so cash flow remained tight even with orders coming in. Critics questioned whether personal computers had real use beyond hobbyists. Mainframes still dominated businesses, and mini-computers filled university labs. Wozniak's breakthrough was making the Apple I accessible. It connected to any TV for display and used a keyboard instead of switches. This approach would later define Apple's philosophy, though neither founder realized it yet. By July 1976, they'd sold about 150 Apple I computers. The real surprise came when Wozniak began designing its successor. He added color graphics, sound capabilities, and expansion slots, features unheard of in home computers. Jobs insisted on a sleek plastic case instead of wood. They poured their profits into this new model, aware that companies like Commodore and Radio Shack were eyeing the same market. The stage was set for what would become the Apple II, the rise of the Apple II. By 1978, the Apple II looked different from anything else in homes and offices. Its beige plastic case hid advanced features, color graphics, built-in basic programming, and 8 expansion slots. Unlike earlier computers that required technical knowledge, this one worked right out of the box. Schools bought them for computer labs, and small businesses used them for accounting. The price tag of $1,298 was high, but cheaper than mini-computers that cost 10 times more. VisiCalc changed how people viewed personal computers. Released in 1979, this spreadsheet program turned the Apple II into a business tool. Accountants could now automate calculations that previously took hours. Software sales drove hardware purchases in a cycle Apple would replicate for decades. By 1980, over 100,000 Apple IIs had been sold, many bundled with VisiCalc. Competitors scrambled to match this combination of accessible hardware and practical software. IBM entered the personal computer market in 1981 with the 5150. It had stronger brand recognition but lacked Apple's user-friendly design. IBM PCs used text-based DOS, while Apple II offered color and sound. Schools stuck with Apple because teachers found its interface easier to explain. Interestingly, many early PC adopters owned both systems, IBM for work, Apple for home. This split showed how personal computing was becoming mainstream. Apple's December 1980 IPO marked a turning point. Shares priced at $22 each surged to $29 on the first day of trading. The offering raised $110 million, making it the largest since Ford in 1956. Overnight, employee stock options created millionaires, including Wozniak and Jobs. The success proved personal computers weren't just a hobbyist market. Investors saw potential for growth as prices dropped and capabilities increased yearly. Behind the scenes, tensions grew over the Apple II's future. Wozniak favored keeping it simple and affordable, while Jobs wanted radical redesigns. Engineers worked on multiple prototypes, including one codenamed Sarah, that would become the Apple III. The original team expanded from a handful to over 1,000 employees, bringing corporate structure to the freewheeling startup culture. Retail partnerships with chains like Computerland expanded distribution beyond specialty stores. Production challenges emerged as demand outpaced supply. Some customers waited months for orders, despite factories running 3 shifts. Quality control suffered under the pressure. Early Apple III units overheated due to inadequate cooling. These growing pains showed the difficulties of scaling up while maintaining Apple's reputation for reliability. The stage was set for Apple's next act. By 1982, the Lisa project was already underway, featuring a graphical interface inspired by Xerox PARC research. Meanwhile, a smaller team led by Jobs began work on an affordable computer with similar capabilities. This would eventually become the Macintosh, Apple's bold bet on the future of computing. The Apple II remained profitable, but its successor was taking shape in secret labs across Silicon Valley. The Macintosh Revolution. The Macintosh debuted during the 1984 Super Bowl with an ad unlike anything seen before. Directed by Ridley Scott, it showed a dystopian world shattered by a woman hurling a sledgehammer at a screen. This introduced a computer designed to break conventions. Unlike the text-based IBM PCs, the Mac used a graphical interface with icons and a mouse. You could point and click instead of typing commands. The radical design came from Apple's visits to Xerox PARC, where researchers had pioneered these concepts years earlier. But Apple made them practical for consumers. At $2,495, the Macintosh cost more than many expected. Its 128 kilobytes of RAM felt limiting compared to IBM's expanding memory options. Early adopters included graphic designers and publishers drawn to its bitmap display and Mac Paint software. Aldus PageMaker, released in 1985, turned the Mac into a tool for desktop publishing. Small print shops could now produce newsletters and brochures without expensive typesetting equipment. But business users hesitated. Critical programs like Lotus 123 weren't available on Mac initially. The learning curve surprised some buyers. People accustomed to keyboards struggled with the mouse at first. Computers had always required memorizing commands. Now they demanded new motor skills. Apple opened retail spaces called Macintosh Centers to demonstrate the interface. Sales reps would guide customers through dragging icons and using menus. Schools became testing grounds, with students often adapting faster than teachers. Over time, the mouse became second nature, proving Jobs' belief that intuitive design won over complexity. Inside Apple, tensions grew over the Mac's direction. The original team had worked under a pirate flag in their building, but corporate realities set in. Production costs stayed high, while competitors lowered prices. When sales slumped in late 1984, inventory piled up. Some blamed the closed architecture. Apple prevented third-party hardware additions that IBM allowed. Others cited unfinished software. The Mac Write word processor couldn't handle documents longer than 10 pages initially. Developers needed time to master the new system. By 1985, the Mac represented both promise and problems. Its interface clearly pointed to computing's future, but current limitations frustrated users. Apple sold 250,000 units the first year, respectable but below projections. Meanwhile, the Apple II still generated most of the company's revenue. This divide reflected a larger conflict between Apple's past and future. Jobs pushed for bold leaps forward, while others favored gradual improvements to established products. The Mac's influence extended beyond sales numbers. Its design language, the smiling computer icon, the trash can metaphor, set standards still used today. Adobe's PostScript fonts leveraged the Mac's graphics to revolutionize typography. Even Microsoft took notice, eventually developing Windows as a response. These ripples would grow into waves, but not before Apple faced internal storms. The same year the Mac launched, Jobs recruited John Sculley from Pepsi to lead Apple. Their partnership began with optimism, but would soon fracture over the company's direction. The Sculley clash. The tension in Apple's boardroom could be felt in the summer of 1985. John Sculley had joined 2 years earlier as CEO, recruited personally by Steve Jobs, with the famous pitch, "Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or do you want to come with me and change the world?" At first, their partnership showed promise. Sculley brought corporate discipline to Apple's chaotic growth, while Jobs focused on product vision. But their approaches soon diverged. Jobs wanted to pour resources into next-generation projects, while Sculley prioritized stabilizing Apple's finances after the expensive Macintosh launch. The Macintosh division became a battleground. Jobs saw it as the future and wanted to slash prices to boost adoption. Sculley argued Apple couldn't afford to lose more money on each unit. When Mac sales disappointed, Jobs pushed to replace the existing team. Sculley resisted what he saw as impulsive changes. The conflict escalated at a May 1985 board meeting, where Scully asked directors to choose between his leadership and Jobs' influence. In a move that stunned Silicon Valley, the board sided with Scully. Corporate governance experts later pointed to this moment as a textbook case of founder-CEO friction. Young tech companies often reach a point where professional management clashes with visionary founders. Jobs had helped build Apple from nothing, but his mercurial style created operational challenges as the company grew. Scully maintained shareholder value should come before technological leaps. Neither approach was entirely wrong, just incompatible during that period. After losing his operational role, Jobs considered taking a different position at Apple, focusing on new products. But the arrangement didn't last. In September 1985, he formally resigned, telling the board he planned to start a new computer company. Few guessed how significant this departure would eventually become. Along with several Apple employees, Jobs founded Next Computer, aiming to build powerful workstations for education. Around the same time, he purchased a small graphics division from Lucasfilm that would become Pixar. Apple stock barely reacted to Jobs' departure, which shows how investors viewed the situation at the time. The company had $2 billion in annual revenue and seemed stable under Scully. The Apple II still generated steady income, and new Mac models were in development. What outsiders couldn't see was how much of Apple's innovative energy had walked out the door, an absence that would become apparent in the coming years as Microsoft gained ground in personal computing. For Jobs, this period became a transformative exile. At Next, he learned hard lessons about manufacturing and costs. At Pixar, he discovered the potential of digital creativity tools. Both experiences would reshape his thinking about technology and business. Apple continued without its co-founder, gradually losing its edge in an industry it helped create. The stage was set for one of technology's most unlikely second acts. But that story would take more than a decade to unfold. Steve Jobs reinvents himself. The years after leaving Apple became a period of reinvention for Steve Jobs. Next Computer, founded in 1985, aimed to build powerful workstations for universities. The sleek black machines featured advanced technology like optical drives and object-oriented programming tools. But at $6,500 per unit, far more than standard PCs, they struggled to find buyers. Educational institutions couldn't afford them, and businesses preferred cheaper alternatives. Only about 50,000 Next computers sold over a decade, despite their technical innovations. Jobs poured millions of his own money into keeping the company afloat, learning tough lessons about pricing and market demand. Meanwhile, Pixar followed a different trajectory. What began as a hardware company selling image computers transformed under Jobs' ownership. He shifted focus to animation after seeing the creative potential in their short films. Luxo Jr., released in 1986, became the first CGI film nominated for an Academy Award. While Next floundered, Pixar secured a landmark deal with Disney to produce Toy Story. The 1995 release changed animation forever, proving computers could create emotionally resonant stories. Pixar's success gave Jobs financial breathing room, though he remained deeply involved in Next's struggles. The contrasting fortunes of these ventures shaped Jobs' leadership style. At Next, he insisted on perfection. Machines had to meet exacting aesthetic standards. delaying production. At Pixar, he learned to trust creative teams rather than micromanage. Both experiences forced him to confront realities he'd avoided at Apple: manufacturing complexities, partnership dynamics, and the patience required to build new markets. The Apple comeback. The first iPod appeared in October 2001, a small white rectangle with a spinning wheel. At 6.5 ounces, it felt substantial, yet portable, capable of holding 1,000 songs when most MP3 players struggled with 20. The $399 price drew skepticism. Why pay more than competing devices? But Apple emphasized simplicity. While others required manual file transfers, the iPod synced seamlessly with iTunes. Users could organize playlists with a few clicks, something competitors overlooked. Early adopters included musicians and college students who valued storage capacity. Even critics admitted the scroll wheel made navigation intuitive compared to button-heavy rivals. Digital music faced challenges in 2001. Napster had popularized file sharing, but legal issues left consumers without reliable options. The iTunes Store launched in April 2003 with 200,000 songs at 99 cents each, offering a legitimate alternative. Record labels hesitated at first, fearing profit loss. Apple convinced them by preventing song duplication and embedding user data in files. This compromise preserved royalties while giving listeners flexibility. Within a week, iTunes sold 1 million tracks, proof consumers would pay for convenience. The iPod evolved quickly. A 2003 Windows-compatible version expanded its market. The 2004 iPod Mini introduced aluminum cases and colors, while the Shuffle removed the screen entirely for pure music randomization. Each iteration reinforced Apple's ecosystem. iTunes became the hub for managing devices alongside music libraries. Competitors like Sony clung to proprietary formats, but Apple embraced MP3 compatibility while adding fair play copyright protection. This balance between openness and control became a hallmark. By 2005, iPods accounted for 26% of Apple's revenue. Their signature white earbuds turned wearers into walking advertisements. Some schools banned them during exams, evidence of their cultural saturation. Yet technology analysts wondered how long standalone music players would last. Mobile phones increasingly included MP3 functions, though none matched the iPod's storage or interface. Rumors circulated about Apple developing its own phone. The iPod's influence extended beyond sales. It trained consumers to expect seamless hardware-software integration, a principle Apple would apply to future products. The click wheel's tactile feedback presaged touchscreen gestures. iTunes demonstrated how software could incentivize hardware purchases. These lessons shaped Apple's approach when smartphones emerged. Interestingly, the iPod's decline began as soon as its greatest successor launched. When Jobs unveiled the iPhone in 2007, he positioned it as 3 devices in one: a phone, an internet communicator, and, significantly, an iPod with touch controls. The writing was on the wall. Within 5 years, standalone iPod sales dwindled, but their legacy lived on in every iPhone's music app. This transition illustrated Apple's willingness to cannibalize its own products. Rather than let competitors do it first, the iPhone unveiled. The January 9th, 2007 keynote introduced a device that would redefine expectations. Steve Jobs called it 3 products in one: A widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communicator. The demonstration showed features now taken for granted: visual voicemail, pinch to zoom, and inertial scrolling. The absence of a physical keyboard puzzled BlackBerry executives, who dismissed it as a niche product for Apple enthusiasts. Microsoft's Steve Ballmer famously laughed at the $499 price point, confident Windows mobile devices would dominate. Early adopters faced limitations. The original iPhone lacked third-party apps, relying instead on web apps through Safari. AT&T's exclusive contract locked users into a slow EDGE network, yet customers lined up overnight anyway, drawn by the seamless integration no competitor offered. The touchscreen responded intuitively where others required styluses. Apple had optimized the interface completely around finger input, eliminating unnecessary complexity. Within 74 days, sales reached 1 million units, surpassing the iPod's first-year adoption rate. Market researchers noted something unexpected. Previous smartphones targeted business users with keyboards optimized for email. The iPhone attracted everyday consumers who appreciated its simplicity. By 2008, when Apple introduced the App Store and 3G connectivity, developers rushed to create mobile experiences impossible on other platforms. Games like Tap Tap Revenge showed the potential of touch controls, while social networks redesigned their websites as dedicated apps. The smartphone transformed from productivity tool to personal companion. Technology historians point to subtle innovations that made the difference. The iPhone's capacitive touch sensors enabled multi-touch gestures competitors couldn't replicate immediately. The aluminum and glass construction set premium design standards. Perhaps most importantly, Apple controlled both hardware and software updates, ensuring quality across generations. This vertical integration allowed features like visual voicemail that required carrier cooperation, something open-platform Android struggled with later. Behind the scenes, engineers worked on expanding Apple's mobile lineup. The iPhone's success created demand for a larger screen device optimized for reading and browsing. At the same time, iPad development had actually preceded the iPhone. Jobs shelved the tablet project when he recognized smartphones as the immediate opportunity. Now, with touch technology refined and app ecosystem thriving, the timing was right to revisit tablets. The pieces were in place for Apple to enter another market competitors hadn't noticed was shifting. The ecosystem expands. The rivalry between Apple and Microsoft represented two distinct philosophies about computing. Microsoft focused on software licensing, making Windows available to any hardware manufacturer. This approach gave them 90% market share by the 1990s, but sacrificed control over user experience. Apple took the opposite path, designing both hardware and software together, even if it meant selling fewer devices. These competing strategies pushed both companies to innovate in different ways. Microsoft optimized for broad compatibility, while Apple polished every detail of its integrated systems. The conflict intensified during the 1990s when Apple struggled financially. Microsoft's Windows 95 adopted elements of the Macintosh interface, like the Start menu resembling Apple's application launcher. Apple sued, claiming copyright infringement, but ultimately settled when Microsoft invested $150 million in Apple in 1997. This deal shocked observers. Apple needed the cash injection, while Microsoft needed Apple alive to avoid monopoly accusations. The uneasy partnership continued for years, with Microsoft developing Office for Mac even as competition grew elsewhere. Each company responded differently to new markets. When digital music emerged, Microsoft created Plays for Sure, a licensing system for hardware partners. Apple built the closed iPod iTunes ecosystem. Plays for Sure devices suffered compatibility issues, while iPods worked seamlessly. Similarly, Microsoft's Windows mobile phones tried to replicate PC flexibility on small screens. What began as hostility evolved into mutual respect. Microsoft's Surface tablets adopted premium hardware reminiscent of MacBooks. Apple incorporated cloud-based collaboration tools similar to Microsoft 365. Both companies now support open-source software, though in different ways. Their rivalry demonstrates how competition drives progress. Each pushed the other to refine their strengths while addressing weaknesses. As Apple explores augmented reality and Microsoft builds cloud gaming platforms, their decades-long rivalry keeps influencing how technology evolves. Next, we'll examine how Apple's current projects extend this legacy into new frontiers. The Apple of today and tomorrow. The circular silhouette of Apple Park reflects the company's current philosophy, a seamless blend of technology and design. Inside, engineers work on products that carry forward Apple's legacy while pushing into new territories. The transition to Apple Silicon marked a turning point. Custom chips like the M1 and M2 processors transformed Macs, delivering laptop performance with tablet-level efficiency. These weren't just faster computers, they extended battery life significantly and enabled features like real-time photo rendering. The shift illustrated Apple's advantage in controlling both hardware and software. Vision Pro represents Apple's most ambitious gamble since the iPhone. This mixed reality headset combines augmented and virtual reality with eye tracking and gesture controls. Early testers note its technical achievements: 12-millisecond latency to prevent motion sickness, displays sharper than 4K TVs per eye. But challenges loom. At $3,499, it targets professionals first rather than mainstream users. The weight and battery pack suggest this is still a prototype of future wearable computing. Apple appears willing to iterate slowly, much like it did with the Apple Watch. Current product lines reveal strategic priorities. The iPhone maintains iterative updates, better cameras, brighter screens, refined chips. Less visible improvements matter more. Satellite connectivity for emergencies, customizable lock screens, advanced privacy controls. Macs now share processors with iOS devices, allowing features like iPhone apps running natively on desktops. Even accessories show ecosystem thinking. AirPods automatically adjust audio based on head movement, while the Apple Watch detects car crashes. Research suggests Apple spends nearly $30 billion annually on R&D, though much remains secret. Patent filings hint at future directions. Foldable device prototypes, advanced health sensors, even car interface systems. Investments in augmented reality suggest Vision Pro is just the beginning. Analysts note Apple's pattern: enter markets late, then refine existing ideas until they appeal to mass audiences. The Apple Car project, though reportedly scaled back, indicates ambitions beyond personal electronics. Adoption rates will determine Apple's next successes. Less than 1% of iPhone users currently own AR-compatible devices, posing a hurdle for Vision Pro's ecosystem. Healthcare partnerships could expand the Apple Watch's role in medical monitoring. Privacy-focused services like iCloud Private Relay may become bigger differentiators as data concerns grow. Apple's evolution continues quietly, without revolutionary announcements. Small refinements accumulate. The swipe keyboard improved incrementally over a decade before surpassing competitors. MagSafe accessories regained popularity through careful iteration. Even retail stores now serve as community spaces with free workshops. This gradual approach risks missing occasional trends but prevents rushing flawed products. The company faces familiar dilemmas, balancing premium pricing with accessibility, maintaining privacy while enabling AI features. Its solutions will likely follow past patterns, controlled ecosystems rather than open platforms, seamless integration over raw specs. As technology blends deeper into daily life, Apple's emphasis on human-centered design may prove its lasting advantage. The next chapter is being written in labs where few outsiders glimpse prototypes, just as the iPhone once was. In conclusion, Apple's story shows what happens when vision meets persistence. From a garage to global influence, their journey reminds us that meaningful change often comes through steady iteration rather than sudden breakthroughs. Each product built on the last. Failures like the Apple III taught lessons that shaped the Mac, while the iPod's success paved the way for the iPhone. You might notice parallels in your own work. Great ideas rarely arrive fully formed. They develop through patience, refinement, and sometimes revisiting old concepts with new perspective. Thanks for exploring this story. May it inspire your next step forward as Apple's continues to unfold. Are you still awake? Why not binge watch our playlist for more great documentaries on a variety of interesting topics? Click one of the links on this page to learn more.